Hey everybody, Crow back again. Decided to do this this voiceover vlog-like video over this SNES Classic that I've got set up here. You're looking at it. As you can tell, I do have it modded, and that's kind of the point of this video. I kind of wanted to show what games I wound up putting on this. I have I decided 121 games on here. Now, originally I had a lot more. I had up to 166 games at one point. I'm going to have to keep a lookout because I don't want it to go into the demo mode. But the reason I reduced the number of games on it, you could actually put a lot of games on here. But you won't be able to put like all the Super Nintendo games on here. You're limited to about 300 megs total. That includes the games that were already pre-built into the system. So there's Mario. Let's get rid of him. I don't want him to go into any demos. So every time you see that, I'm going to probably hit a button to make sure he doesn't do that. But the trade-off I found with putting a ton of games on here is that you really can't use the save states. So you could load up, all the ROMs you want and fill up all 300 megs with just nothing but ROMs. But you won't be able to use save states. You'll get an error. The system will crash. You'll have to reboot it, and you won't be able to use save states. And the reason for that is because the save states actually take up about 2 megs each. And with 4 save states available, you wind up with 8 possible megs of save state space needed for each game. So if you want to use, I kind of did some math here and kind of estimating that an SNES game, on average is about a meg. Now, granted, a lot of them are less than that and a lot of them are more than that. You have to take in consideration that if you want to use all 4 save states, that you've got the size of the game times 8 megs for each save state, plus any additional room that the game might need for game saves. So you start to lose a lot of space really quickly if you decide to go that route. So if you want to say, hey, I want to use at least... so I kind of figured that if you wanted to use 4 save states, estimating 1 meg each game, you're limited to about 33 games that you can have in here total, including the 21 that are included. And for some people, I think that'd be good. And I think if you want to limit yourself to 2 save states each, you're limited to about 60 games. And if you want to have at least 1 save state for each game, you're limited to about 100 games. Now, since I have 121 games on here, I'm limited to maybe save states for most of the games, but not all of them. And that's fine for what I have. Some of these games really don't need save states. But the reason why the save states take up so much room is because each save state is actually not just a point in time. It is a 45-second recording of, everything up until that save state. Because you could go into these save states, like here for ActRaiser I have, for example. I only played the first level of it just to test it out. And actually I was streaming while I was testing it out. So for like 7 hours the first day I was experimenting with it. And then like another 4 hours the next day I found out that that's when I had 166 games on it, is like the first day, within the first day. And I just kept playing the games, doing save states for all of them. And then that's when I realized, hey, I'm going to run out of space. Let me remove a whole bunch of stuff. So like this save state, for example, you notice that you have the X button rewind here. So if I hit the X here, it'll go into this rewind feature. And then you could actually, it's already starting like 45 seconds before that. And it's like playing up to that point. And you can kind of skip different points and then start playing again at that point, which is a really cool feature, actually. But if you want to use this feature, you have to make sure you have space, and you're not going to be able to like put 200 plus ROMs on it, depending on the size of the ROMs. You could actually put 300 games on here if they're all under a meg, but then you're not going to be able to use any save states. So it's a balancing act. That's what you want to decide to do. And honestly, if you're doing this kind of thing anyway, I know somebody will bring up, hey, you just emulate the stuff anyway. You're unlimited. Use a Raspberry Pi. Yes, that is a valid point. But I was just really curious what the limitations of this were. And so yeah, it's very much unlike the NES Classic, where I could have like 600, 700 ROMs on it and use all the save states and not have any kind of problem. This actually is using a lot more space for save states than the games themselves. So it's really, do you want to use save states or do you not want to use save states? That's the kind of thing if you're going to hack this thing and put whatever games. Maybe you only want a handful more games. Like, why didn't they put Pilot Wings on there? Maybe you'll just add Pilot Wings, that kind of thing. So, yeah, that's just kind of the point I wanted to make here. We're already 5 minutes into this video. But, yeah, let's just go through. I do have 121 games on here. I'd like to go through them and just kind of show what I wound up with after some fine-tuning. I might take some off. I might put some more on, like especially Super Famicom games. If there are more Super Famicom games that I was didn't really know that I want to put on here. But for the most part, I wanted to put on games that I owned for the most part. There's some of them I didn't. And some games that I really wanted to have on here. So, we'll start off with ActRaiser. ActRaiser, of course, a classic SNES game. Not NES. I might say NES accidentally sometimes in this video, but classic NES, like it just did now. Classic Super Nintendo game. Again, one of those games people wonder, why isn't that on there? Aero Fighters, that's a great version. I kept coming back and playing this, but it's a great game there. Based off the Neo Geo game. Arkanoid, Revenge of, was it Do It Again? Arkanoid, Do It Again, or Do It Again. I don't know how you really pronounce that, but yeah, I gotta have that. I love breakout style games. Axlay, classic Konami shoot 'em up. You gotta have it. Batman Returns, very good beat 'em up, very good. Battletoads and Battlemaniacs, not as good as the original Battletoads, but definitely better than Battletoads and Double Dragon, which is why that's not on here. But yeah, I could see myself playing. That's why I left it on there. BioMetal, kind of left it on there because it's a shooter. I have plenty of shooters on here now. But just the nostalgic fact that there's music by 2 Unlimited on there, it's kind of hilarious. Blackthorne, classic game by Interplay. Terrible at it. I couldn't figure out 5 minutes past the game, but I decided to leave it on there. Might take it off if I need more space, but yeah, I left it in there. Bust a Move, or as it should be known, Puzzle Bobble. Kind of left it in there. It's a good puzzle game. Again, it's one of those games I might take out. It gets kind of repetitive, kind of fast. That was kind of iffy on it, but I decided to leave it in there. Captain Commando, classic Capcom beat 'em up. Gotta have it. It's a great game. Of course, you gotta have Castlevania Dracula X. Man, if you're gonna mod this thing, this is a game you need to put on there, because this is one of those games that you're not gonna just find for a decent price in the wild. This is one you're gonna have to emulate anyway, unless you already own it. Next up, Chrono Trigger, another very classic RPG that some people might wonder, hey, why isn't Chrono Trigger on here? Contra 3 was on it to begin with, but honestly, it belongs on this anyway. Darius Twin, another shoot 'em up. Not the best, not the worst. Decided to leave it on there. Demon's Crest, kind of like a pseudo sequel or spin-off of Ghouls' Ghost, another classic Capcom game. Had to leave it in there. Donkey Kong Country was on the system, but I decided to throw on Donkey Kong Country 2 and Donkey Kong Country 3. I'm not a big fan of these games, not as much as a lot of other people are, but I decided to put the whole trilogy on here anyway. EarthBound was already built into the system, but yeah, again, I'd put it in there even if it wasn't. Had to put on Earthworm Jim and Earthworm Jim 2. Left those on there. F-Zero, again, one of the games that was available on launch. Wound up putting that on there and playing it a bit. And now Final Fantasy III was on the system, so I decided to throw in the US version of Final Fantasy II as well, just to have the two there. Yeah, we're not going to put on Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. Final Fight. Yeah, not the best version of Final Fight, but I feel it's an SNES classic, especially if I'm going to have Final Fight 2 and Final Fight 3 on here. I decided I was going to have to put this in there too. I did have Final Fight Guy in here at one point, but I decided no point in having both Final Fight and Final Fight Guy at the same time when you're limited on space. So I took out Final Fight Guy. I could live without it. And then here we have Gokujou Parodius. Love the Parodius games, so of course I'm going to put those in there as well. I think this is the second of the three. Yeah, they're all over the place. They have different names, so they're not together. Gradius III, had to have that in there. Just I love the Gradius series, one of my favorite series for shoot 'em ups. So yeah, got Gradius. Hagane, not a game I'm super familiar with, but I played it a little bit. So, and it seems really awesome, so I had to have that in there. Indiana Jones Classic Adventures, very awesome trilogy. Indiana Jones trilogy at the time when this was made, action game. Pretty difficult, but I had to have it in there. Jaki Crush, of course I had to have Jaki Crush in there. It's one of the Super Famicom games I kind of hunted down, so got to put it in here as well. Kind of like the pseudo-sequel to Alien Crush and Devil's Crush. And then here we have GQ Oshaberi Parodius, one of the later Parodius games on the Super Nintendo. One of the later Super Nintendo games, I think, to begin with. It's got constant speech in it, although it's in Japanese. But, yeah, I had to have all the Parodius games, like I said before. Joe and Mac, excellent game. So I put the sequel in there, too, Joe and Mac 2. Somebody might mention something about Congo Capers. I had in there originally, but I decided to take it out because I decided, I'd rather just have the Joe and Mac games. Killer Instinct, classic a lot of people played on the Super Nintendo. I didn't. I'm not very good at Killer Instinct, but it just felt like it needed to be on there. The Kirby Superstar, that was already built in the system. So I decided to throw in some of the other Kirby games as well, like Kirby Avalanche, which is just really Puyo Puyo reskinned. Kirby's Dream Course was, of course, in there already, but I guess this was one of my favorite games, so I'm really surprised this was included to begin with. So then I also threw in Kirby Dream Land 3, just to have most, if not all, of the Kirby games on the Super Nintendo on this thing. Knights in the Round, really good side-scrolling beat-em-up. Had to have that. Legend, another beat-em-up. Somebody recommended it in the stream, and I played it a little bit. I was like, yeah, I think I got to keep this in there. Really good beat-em-up. Legend of the Mystical Ninja. Had to put this in here because it was included in the Super Famicom version, but not the Super Nintendo version. So I just went ahead and put that in there. Magic Sword, another really classic side-scrolling beat-em-up adventure game. Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse, kind of game I never really played, but it is a classic, so I decided to throw it in there. I had Mickey Mania in here, but I decided to take it out just because I think this is the better game. Mega Man 7, obviously had to throw that in there. I mean, they included Mega Man X. Why not Mega Man 7? That's a very hard game to get your hands on to begin with. So I had to throw Mega Man 7 on there. And since Mega Man X was on there, I had to throw in X2 and X3, of course. Mortal Kombat 2. Now, I did at one point have all 4 Super Nintendo Mortal Kombat games on here. I had Mortal Kombat 1, Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 3, and Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. I decided when I was running out of space, when I wanted to free up space, I was like, this is the only one that really matters on the Super Nintendo. Keep Mortal Kombat 2. So I did. Mr. Do, one of my favorite arcade games with a great Super Nintendo port, so I had to keep Mr. Do on there, or at least put it on there. NBA Jam Tournament Edition. There's 2 NBA Jam games. There's the original and then Tournament Edition. Of course, if you're going to pick one of the 2, pick the Tournament Edition. It's got the, you're on fire kind of deal where they actually get on fire. So I had to leave that in there. It's a classic game. Ninja Warriors again. Now there is a US version of Ninja Warriors, but I decided to put the Japanese version on because the US version is censored in a way. So I've been told. So I decided to leave the Japanese version again. And again, if you're not clear, like all the games I'm mentioning did work on this. There were some games that didn't work. ActRaiser 2 did not work, for example. So that's one reason why that's not on here. But all the games that are on here at this point do work. I left Out of This World on here just because it was a PC game I liked back in the day. I actually do have it on PC. But it's really cool to see this on the Super Nintendo. So, if I ever need to take more games out, I would probably take this one out. But I left it in just because. Pack Attack, this is actually a very small file. One of the reasons I left it in there. We actually own it as well, so I decided to leave it in there. Puzzle game. Pack in Time, same deal. I own this game. Not very big file-wise. I decided to leave it in there. And then here we go, Parodius Dal. This is actually the first of the Parodius games that were on the Super Nintendo. So, gotta have it. I love the Parodius series. Phalanx. The shoot 'em up with the terrible box art. It's actually a half decent game, so gotta have shoot 'em ups on here. Pilot Wings, a game I can't believe was missing from this. So one of the three launch games for the Super Nintendo. When I say launch games, these were the games that were available on launch in the U.S. Like you could buy this. Super Mario World was included with the system, F-Zero, and that was pretty much it on launch day. And we had this one when we bought it. We didn't get the Super Nintendo on launch day, but Pilot Wings was one of the oldest games we had for the system. So, and I love this game, so I had to have it. I know a lot of people consider it just to be a tech demo, but I genuinely had fun with this game. Plock, I threw it in there. It's kind of a decent game. Again, if there's ever a need for me to remove more games, this might be one of them. Pocky Rocky, Pocky Rocky 2, just awesome games. Not too cheap to find these days, so throw them in here. Prince of Persia, really decent version of Prince of Persia on the Super Nintendo. Left it in there. I had Prince of Persia 2 on here at one point, but it didn't play that well. It kind of sucked, so at least from my 3 minutes of playing it, so I took it off just for room purposes. Q*bert 3 played a little bit, pretty awesome, so I left it in there. R-Type 3, again, just another shoot 'em up. R-Type, for part of the R-Type series, left it in there. Roadrunner's Death Valley Rally. This was one of those games I actually played through from start to finish way back in the day. So I've got some nostalgic memories of this game, so I left it in there. Secret of Mana was included with the system, so I decided to include Secret of Evermore. Side Pocket, very simple, classic, fun. Just a very simple, casual game for the Super Nintendo, so I left it in there. Or, yeah, put it on there. It's decent, it's fun if you ever want to relax and play something relaxing. This is it. SimCity, a lot of people were like, why wasn't SimCity included? So I included the Super Nintendo. I remember playing this version too. Not as much as the Commodore 64 version I had back in the day, but yeah, I went with SimCity. Sonic Blast Man, very fun beat 'em up. So I included Sonic Blast Man and Sonic Blast Man 2. Space Invaders. This is a very, very, very small game, so it's worth it to have Space Invaders on your Super Nintendo, arcade quality, different modes, that kind of thing. Space Megaforce, part of the LS series, and I actually remember playing this, I think, all the way through way back in the day. Very fun game, had to have it on there. Sparkster, again, sequel to Rocket Knight Adventures, which is not on the system, was on the Genesis, but yeah, fun game, you had to put it on there. Star Fox, part of the system. Star Fox 2, again, part of the system, but I decided to include the English prototype for Star Fox 2, just because I've heard differences between this, and a lot of people prefer the prototype version. So it's fun to have both versions of it on here, just for comparison's sake, and yeah, they both work. Street Fighter 2 Turbo is on here. I could have added a couple other ones. Super Street Fighter 2 does not work, okay? I just wanted to, only put it on there to test it out. It plays, but all the graphics are glitched out, so it's not worth putting on there. And if I was going to have one Street Fighter game on here anyway, it would be this one. Sunset Riders, oh, so much fun. I played this in the arcade all the time, so I had to put the Super Nintendo on here. Super Adventure Island, not a game I played a whole lot, but it just feels like this is just classic Super Nintendo, so I left it on there, and I also just left on Super Adventure Island too. Super Bomberman, had to have Super Bomberman on there. It's a game I played way back in the day. Super Bomberman 2 as well. And then I also had to include the Japanese versions of Super Bomberman 3, 4, and 5, just because I am a fan of the Super Bomberman series. Unfortunately, there's no way to play with the multi-tap, but so I leave them on there too, because I do enjoy the single-player version of that. Super Bowling, this is just a fun game. I own it, so I just had to leave it in here. Super Buster Brothers, another fun game, otherwise known as Peng. Had to leave it in there. Super Castlevania IV, obviously part of the system, but had to leave it in there. What I mean is I would have put it in here even if it wasn't. Super Double Dragon, I'm kind of iffy on this one. I've never really played it, but I just felt like it needed a Double Dragon game, especially since I've got the first 3 Double Dragons on the NES Classic, so I just felt like it belonged on here. Super Ghouls'n Ghosts, classic game, part of the system, but it belonged on there anyway. Super High Impact, I played this in the arcade a lot, and I rented the Super Nintendo one day, I rented this for the Super Nintendo one day, and I had fun with it. So I kind of just wanted to put it on there. It's kind of like NFL Blitz before NFL Blitz in a way. Super Mario All-Stars, left it on here. I could take this off, but just because all the Mario games I have on the NES Classic. But, yeah, I just had to leave. I just wanted to have this on here anyway. You know, so you could have all of the Super Mario Brother games, the enhanced versions on the Super Nintendo as well. Super Mario Kart Classic game, of course it belongs on here. Super Mario RPG, again, if it wasn't on there, I would have put it on there. Same thing with Super Mario World, same thing with Super Metroid. Everybody wants these games, so I kind of skip over them. Super Off-Road, I loved Super Off-Road in the arcade. The Super Nintendo version, pretty good, so I left it in there. Super Punch-Out, part of the system. Again, it would have been on there anyway. Super R-Type, just needed another shoot-'em-up on there. Super R-Type is kind of a classic for the system in a way. Super Smash TV, had to include this one on here just because the Super Nintendo port of Super Smash TV is really good. Then, of course, I had to include all three Super Star Wars games because they're hard as hell, but they're classics. And, again, what better way to play them than on the SNES Mini. Super Turrican, fun game. Same thing with Super Turrican 2. Not games that I've really played a whole lot, but it's just like these are games that I want to play, and I can see myself playing them on the system. Of course, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time has to be on this great arcade port, and I played it a lot back in the day, so of course I had to put it on it. Same thing with Tetris and Dr. Mario. I'm actually surprised they didn't put Tetris and Dr. Mario on the SNES Classic. It deserves to be on there. Two great games for the price of one. Tetris 2, Tetris Attack, I just kind of threw these in there. Not the biggest fans of either of these games, but I just felt like, hey, you know what? They deserve to be on there. Legend of Zelda Link to the Past. Oh, we all have to have this on there, and luckily they included it. So even if you don't hack it, you get Legend of Zelda Link to the Past. Thunder Spirits, kind of like I think it's a port of Thunder Force 3, though not as good. But what the hell, included anyway. Total Carnage, I think the only reason I really included this is just because I have Smash TV on here, and it's kind of like a pseudo-sequel, kind of in a way. So, yeah, same vein. So, I always have, to me, I always think of the two games together, so I kind of had to include that. UN Squadron, a.k.a. Area 88, brilliant game, early game on the Super Nintendo. One of the must-haves early in the system's life. So, yeah, of course it's got to be here. Uniracers, later in the SNES life. A lot of people didn't like this game, but I remember buying it back in the day and having a ball with it. So, of course, I got to include Uniracers. And Wario's Woods, it's a game I was not familiar with until the Animal Crossing game on the GameCube. And I unlocked it there, and I played the NES version. And playing the NES version, I was like, yeah, I love Wario's Woods. So I got to play the Super Nintendo version as well. It's pretty much the same game between both systems, but they're kind of different in a way, too. Wild Gums, this is the game that everybody wants to get their hands on, but it is expensive as hell. It's fun, too, so got to leave Wild Guns on there. Yoshi's Cookie. I haven't really played this game a whole lot, but just seems like it needs to be on the SNES Classic. Yoshi's Island was built on the system, but yeah, I gotta include that. And finally, Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Again, it's just a game. I'm not as big of a fan as for this game as a lot of people are, but yeah, it's gotta be on there. And that's it. Wow. Okay, I talked about this for about 25 minutes, so we'll leave it at that. It's going to be a long video. We'll see how many people are actually interested in what I've said, what I've put on here. But again, it's compressed down from like your 11 hours of streaming I did hacking this thing and going through games. So maybe this could be considered kind of a podcast type of vlog video. But we'll leave it at that. Thanks, everyone, for watching. See you all next time. Bye.